Today I'm going to do a spoiler-free discussion about my favorite game mechanism in Pandemic Legacy Season 2. I have played the prologue and the first game of Pandemic Legacy Season 2, so I am not even equipped to talk about my favorite legacy and spoiler mechanisms in this game. Maybe I'll do a video after I'm done the entire 12-month campaign. For now, I just want to talk about a core mechanism in the game that I really like. This is something that you would know if you read the rulebook online right now. If you even probably looked at the back of the box, you would know it. Yeah, you would know inherently. If you want to know nothing about the game, you can just skip this video. And I won't even go into the theme so that you can discover the theme on your own. But I'll start with a discussion, a quick note about Pandemic itself. So in Pandemic, there's a plague spreading around the world, and you are trying to remove that plague from the board. That plague manifests in the form of cubes on the board, and so your job is to remove those cubes and gather cards to cure a disease. The removing cube mechanism is satisfying. I would put it akin to like vacuuming my room after a lot of cat litter gets on the floor of my office. It goes from very dirty to very clean in a few seconds, and it's very satisfying to do that in the same way that it's very satisfying to pick up those cubes from the board. But it's kind of, I wouldn't quite use the word destructive, but it's certainly not additive, and that's what I really like about Pandemic Legacy Season 2. It flips that mechanism on its head in that there are no disease cubes on the board, at least inherently, not in the same way that they are in Pandemic. Rather, you are putting supply cubes on the board. So on your turn, instead of like removing a disease cube, you're putting a supply cube on the board, and you're in trouble if you ever draw a city card that comes up and says, hey, New York, if the city card says New York, and you don't have any supply cubes there, that's when you're in trouble. So you're trying to supply the entire board. It's the additive nature of this that is, I would say, definitely more satisfying than removing cubes from the board. As satisfying as that is, and it has its own place, but in general, I think it's more satisfying to add than it is to destruct or deduct. It feels like you're building towards something. You can look at the board with a sense of satisfaction. Hey, we're doing okay right now. We have a lot of stuff. Look at all these cubes that we have on this board. It feels good to fill the board with cubes. And one other aspect of this mechanism that I really like in this game is that at the beginning of the game, depending on the month, you get a certain number of supply cubes. Like at the beginning of the first month, you get 36 supply cubes. You get all the cubes. And you can put them wherever you want. You could put all of them on the same city. You could put all 36 cubes on one city and make that city safe forever. You'd be in terrible trouble for the rest of the world. But you could do that, and I think that is amazing, that to give players the freedom to put those cubes where they want on the board. Granted, and really, it is a huge gamble because you don't know, that step precedes the step of setup where you're actually drawing the cards to determine which of those cubes will be removed during setup. So it's a huge gamble, but you really could roll the dice at the beginning of the game, figuratively, not literally. There are no dice in this game, and put a bunch of cubes on certain cities and fewer cubes in other cities, and in the hopes of that those original setup cards will target those well-populated cities, those cities with lots of supplies, rather than the other cities. I find that's a really interesting decision. My group in the first game, in the prologue, we kind of hedged our bets and just went for 3 cubes in each city. But I would love to experiment maybe in our next game where we put a bunch of cubes in certain cities and fewer cubes in others. I really like that freedom. It reminds me of the freedom during the setup of the game Summit, the cooperative game in Summit, where you have a lot of freedom as to how much stuff you're going to carry, how much oxygen you're going to take, how much food, and the items you're going to take, and how those things impact how fast you can travel. I like that freedom at the beginning of a game, particularly a cooperative game, where even if one player doesn't quite understand what's going on, all the other players can help out and join in that decision. So yeah, I really like that core mechanism. If you have a core mechanism in Pandemic Legacy Season 2 that is additive and gives players freedom during setup, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Or if there's another cooperative game you can think of that has this additive nature instead of deductive and subtractive nature, I'd love to hear about that in the comments. Also, I post these videos every Tuesday and Friday, so if you want to keep getting them, feel free to subscribe. Thanks.